All right, so off camera, I just marked down my center back line, which is where my meter stick is right now, right there. And I've also taken some measures from my mannequin back here, and so I can actually work with you with some actual reasonable measurements. What we're going to do is we're going to separate the top of that dress and the bottom of the dress. So we're going to do everything above the waist is going to be called the bodice, and everything below the waist is going to be the skirt. And we'll draft that separately and we'll do that in small scale. Okay, so first, what we need to know is this dress is actually made out of a jersey or a knit kind of thing, like t shirt material, but it's embroidered on it. We're going to pretend that it's not and that it has all the structure added to it. So, with that being said, this dress cannot be made out of jersey anymore with this pattern. You would remove the darts that we will make and we'll have flat pieces because jersey actually wraps around the body and doesn't need any structural darts or any kind of suppression. It stretches very well. It molds to the body. Okay? So what I've done is I've marked about a 16.5 inch line down for the center back. And we're going to pretend that the top of that line is the nape of the neck. And we're going to start to add in our lengths. We're going to add in the sky, which for my model was 9 inches. And then we're also going to add in the waist, which was 14.5. So now with those two, we can start to square stuff off. So I'm going to take that 9 inch line, which is right here, and square it off. Then I'm going to take my 14 inch 0.5 and square it off. I'm just kind of squaring it off to infinity because we're going to add in the chest measurement and the waist measurement onto those. Now we want to take that chest measurement, which mine was 35. I want to half it to get 17.5. Now with that, I know I'm only going to draft half of the top portion because it's even on both sides. If we look at our image, if we cut it in half, we would get two identical pieces. So, with that being said, we're going to take that 17.5 and now we're going to divide it by 3. And we get 5.83. For me, it might be different for you. So my 5.83, that's about 5 7/8, just about. It's a little bit more. No, it's actually less. So that, now we know that. I also want to take that 17.5 and divide it in half, which is 8.75. I'm going to mark that on the skyline or that chest line here. Okay? Now that we know those, I want to square that 8.7 line down. Into the waist. Because we're going to take this 5-inch line and square it down as well. Now, from this line, which would be our side seam, This is our waistline, our skyline, our side seam. Now that we know our side seam, we're going to take the waist measurement. Mine is 27, and we're going to divide it by 4. And we get 6.75. So we know that this line, the line squared down is 8.75. And we need the waist to equal 6.75. So we have 8.75 going right here. This line needs to be 6.75. And all we're going to do is make this line shorter by subtracting the 2 inches. So that 5-inch line is going to square down. And we're going to take out 2 inches with what we call a dart. So this is our center back. And our side seam. Just like that. That's what we're going to do to here. So, with that being said, we're going to, from this squared off line, go out 2 inches. Make a mark. Now we're going to connect that mark here. And we're going to make this one come down. This is our dart. This right here is going to make this line. When you measure it, it should be 3 inches on this side and 3.5 on the other. Whoa, wait. I'm sorry, I misspoke. 3.75 to get our 6.75 and our back. Now, we're going to go up from the side seam at the skyline. We're going to go up about 3/4 of an inch or 0.75 inches. And we're going to square it out lightly. This is where you're able to say to yourself, okay, I think I want the back to curve a little bit more up to the armhole but low in the back because we have this low front. So we can either go in between the shoulder blades with this, or we can keep it level with where a bra would normally sit. I'm going to actually take this piece and curve it down using my curved ruler. You can also do this by eye. But what I'm actually going to do is this little number. Here. So that's my finished top right here. And this is my finished side seam. And this is my finished back seam. And then I'm actually going to change the orientation of my dart because I like my darts to face the back of my dress and not more towards the center. So this is fine. All you're going to do is erase this line, that 5.825. You're going to erase this line and instead take the 3 inches that it suppressed over here, or whatever it suppressed in between the mark that you made at the half chest divided by 6, whatever it took from here, minus 3, I'm going to move that over here. And I'm actually going to move it here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have it to where my dart sits at this line, so my 2 inches is suppressed right here. So I'm going to make a mark here, and I'm going to make a mark here. And I'm going to take this line and erase it as well. And what I'm actually going to do is square this line up. So I'm going to make sure that my ruler is level with this line and go ahead and square it up. And then I'm going to take it and make one line here to touch the top of my dress. And then I'm going to go again and do the same on the other side. That way my dart is not hidden underneath an arm or not hidden away. If you want the dart to be hidden away, what you can do is either take it away from the 2 inches from this side seam. So I would take an inch away here and an inch away here, and then slope the back in, but keep this section in. That is what you would do in this case with the jersey dress. You don't really add darts to jersey because they'll pucker and they'll look bad. But in this case, we're actually going to keep this dart in. Okay? That's just an option with darts. You can have a dart going any way that you could possibly imagine. Okay, so our back piece is done. When you cut this out, the magic of it, you're going to cut this and you're going to mark it. And whenever you go to sew it, you'll actually take it and, let's say, let me actually copy it down. Smurp, here, center back, side, seam. When we actually go to cut this, and this piece is out, we're going to pinch the fabric together and fold it to the back. We're going to make sure that our 2 marked lines meet here, and then we're just going to fold it over, and you always press the dart towards the back seam when it's in the back, and when it's in the front, you're going to press it towards the side seam. We're going to continue on to the front portion of the dress. Now that we have our back section, we've taken about 9 inches of our 17.5. Let's go ahead and put in the rest of our 17.5 here and mark it. And then we're going to square it off to make our center front. Here's our center front. Okay, here's the fun part. In this gown, we see that from the center front, it's very low. We can see that it's below the breast line. So this is up to you. I'm personally going to take it about 3 inches down because I see the smallest part of this waist is right there. So from this line, I'm going to go down 3 inches. I'm actually going to use my smaller ruler. I'm going to go down 3 inches. and make a line. Now, I'm going to fill in the rest of my waist because it is easier to do this first. I have my half waist is, my full waist is 27. I'm going to divide that by 2. And then, after I divide it by 2, I'm going to subtract the 6.75 that I have in the back. And again, I get an even 6.75. So now, I'm going to mark from the center front out. I'm going to find the center of what's left. So I have about 8.75 once again. I'm going to divide 8.75 divided by 2. It's about 4 3/8. So I'm going to mark a line here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square this line up only to the skyline. Only there. And then I'm going to mark 1 inch on this side towards the center front. And then on the other side, towards the side seam, I'm going to mark 2 inches. And I'm going to do what I did in the back and connect that line. Remember how I said when you measure that the skyline should be even with where the nipple would be? This is where the apex of a dart should be in the front. It should be in line with the nipple. And because I want a better fit underneath, I'm going to take a measure. I'm going to draw a line from the skyline, which is here, about we'll say about 1 1/4 inches down, and draw an imaginary line all the way around. And I took an underbust measurement, and that's going to be right underneath where the band of a bra would sit. So from this measurement, I know I took 30 and I need it in half, so that's 15. So I just want to take, I can even take my small ruler and just measure only the parts that's not in the dart. So right here, I wouldn't measure. This little section, don't measure. This little section, do not measure. So I'm going to measure here, and I get 4. I get 3.75. .5, and I get 3.25, and I'm going to add those up to get 4 plus 3.75 plus 4.5 plus 3.25. I get 15.5 times 2 gives me 31. So I know that there is about 1 inch of fullness underneath that should not be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my darts. I'm going to take a little bit, about 1/2 inch from each dart. So I'm going to widen it by 1/2 inch. So 0.25 on one side, 0.25 on another side. On this one, I'm going to do the same thing of taking that away and then taking that away. And then I'm just going to curve these lines out by taking my ruler and going just like that, and then rejoining it with the rest of it. To make my new dart. Let's try it again on this one. Here to join here. Join here. And join here. Now I'm going to erase my old dart. Okay. Now, let's address this point. So I know that this is where my nipple kind of lines. This is where it's personal preference. The lower this number is, the closer to exposing the breast we're going to be. So we don't want to expose the whole thing. But in this case, it's not very modest as well. So what we want to do is we want to take our ruler, and I personally would go about 3.5 above. That'll reach a little bit above, in line with the actual armpit a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3.5 from here and mark a line straight up. And the way I got that so even was because in our dart, I squared it down from the half point, from the midpoint, and I can draw that line up. I lightly drew the line up and marked it 3 inches above. So now I'm going to I can either take my clear ruler, which I am going to do, or I could take my normal ruler. And remember this line from the beginning where we first started the front piece? That 3 inches down, we're going to connect this. And then, lastly, we're going to connect that to the center, to the side seam. Now, because it was jersey knit, it has a slight curve to it. That's due to the fabric. If we want to mimic that same thing, I would take my curve and go a little bit up to where I have like a graceful curve. It starts to gracefully curve at about 12. So I'm not adding any kind of length to it. I'm just kind of adding a curve that I couldn't really get. It's not very dramatic here, but when we start to actually make it and it forms over the body, it will. So here I would also add another curve, but this is just for personal preference. That's too big. Let me see here. I can use this. So I can get some type of a curve. And now we're ready to cut out our pattern. We have 2 body pieces. So we have our center back piece, or our back piece, and we have our front piece joined together at the side seam. In the next step, you would start to add seam allowances. Typically, most people would do 1/2 inch seam allowance at the side seam, and the front piece would not be cut with a seam. You don't have to, but because this goes into a skirt, we would start to combine those pieces. This piece would be cut on what we call the fold. And then it'll be transferred over to the fabric. So we would have this piece cut on the fold and then be sewn that way. Lastly, we need to address this strap. The strap really isn't a pattern piece. It's more of depending on who the client is. Because it is a spaghetti strap, you would do it with about a bias tape situation, and that would line the front and all of these edge. But you do need to mark where the placement of those are. I would mark where we originally were going to put that dart, which is here, all the way to the dart. These are places where you could put that strap, and it makes sense. You can't put it in the side seam because that's where the arm needs to go. But we need to leave a little room for the actual arm. So from either the 1/6 of the chest or the dart. I would put it here because I like a very close fit of the shoulder strap. And from this picture, you would obviously put the other strap there. And that would need to be marked on your pattern as you sew. Also, that needs to be marked. These two darts need to be marked. And then you need to mark the center front and however you want to close it. If you want to close it with a zipper, I advise putting a 3/4 inch seam allowance to the back so you have that ease of putting the zipper in. You can put an invisible zipper or a box zipper, whichever closure method you prefer. This dress could be boned. I don't recommend it. And there's also another way you could actually do this. You can have this as a separate pattern piece where the dart is just a seam, which is where all of these areas in between would be cut out as separate pieces. So you would have piece 1, 2. We would draw a line up the center of this to create 3 and 4. This is a way that you can do that. This is the way I would construct it, especially the back piece. Next, we're going to move over to the skirt, which is actually not as hard as what you would think. So the first part of the skirt we see is it has a waist. If we were doing our fabric that doesn't have any stretch to it like jersey, we would put 2 darts in it, and those darts would be about whatever the hip minus waist lengths. So my hip was 24, my waist was 14.5. So I'm going to take 24 minus 14.5. And I'm going to divide that. I'm going to subtract that and get 9.5. So our darts in the front are going to go down 9.5. I'm actually going to draw this on the fold. So this pattern piece is on the fold. When you see this little bracket on the edge of something, it means it's on the fold. So I'm going to take, I know that the dart needs to be this length down, 9.5. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to actually lengthen this line out. Take the front portion. The front and the back patterns are going to look the exact same for this skirt. So you can actually cut 2 on fold. Okay? So we're going to take the midpoint of the front piece. So this is the center front, side seam here. Okay? And we're going to line this dart up with this one. And from the fold of this one to here, that dart is 3 inches. So we're going to do this one 3 inches in here. And then from the side seam here, it was about 3.25 here. So we're going to just make a little tiny dart here. That is that 9.5 inches down. So we can suppress some stuff. In the back, I wouldn't do this dart as low. I would probably go about 5 inches with it. Just about. That all depends on your fitting and how you want it to fit. Next, we're going to take that 9.5 and square it out from the center front and center back. And then we want to put in our hip measurement divided by 4. So that's 9.25. So this would square out to 9.25, this line. And then we're going to connect it with a graceful curve. And lastly, we should have taken a knee measurement. I didn't take one on mine because I really don't have a knee, really. And we're going to take, from this line, we're going to subtract our knee measurement to get this length. We're going to take our knee to knee minus to hip. So my to knee was 39 and my to hip was 24. So we're going to take 39 minus 24 from the hip line down here is 15 inches. So here we're going to square out whatever the width of our knee was. Whatever that was, we're going to take that measurement here. I'm going to try and guess and just say that's 9. Let's make it about 7 here. So I'm going to make that 7 inches right here. And then we're just going to draw a graceful curve down into it. You're making a pencil skirt. So this is our side seam. This is our center front. I'm actually going to redraw it a little bit more nice. So we're going to do this across, this down, this. So we're going to say that this center front, the center front is from here to here is 9.5, and then from here down to here is 15. Here to here is about 2 in between, about 3 here, 3.25 here. This is our side seam. And then this right here, this line is 9.25. We're going to square down the middle of it, connect these for our hip line, waist, knee. We said our knee was about 7. And the side seam is just going to correspond with the front, the center front. So with that curve added, it's going to be approximately 24.5. approximately. Okay? So that's the first part of that skirt. The center back, we just said this dart might be a little bit shorter at about 5 inches of depth. But that's not really, that's going to be according to your fitting. Next, this little flouncy area of the skirt. When you see a skirt like this where it has these folds but it doesn't have what would look typically, I'm going to draw it on the back of this. Typically we'll see a gathered skirt with all of this nonsense at the top, and it looks like so. And it would be shaded back here and shaded right there, shaded right there, right there, right there. We would have this going on. That is a gathered skirt. But in our picture, we don't have these like little, these gathers up top. We have what is called a fold or a circle skirt. It's very minimal. We don't have any, it's very smooth here. So the pattern for a circle skirt is seriously a circle. But as we see in this picture, it has a train. So that circle kind of gets a little augmented. So it more turns into an ellipses. So it looks more like an egg shape. And our circle that we're going to put into it is going to be more towards the front.